Hey everybody, hope you're doing great. And it's awesome to be back doing this reading time on Saturdays. I was gone for a little bit, but we're back, and I feel it's always really important to read books. And hopefully, you do too. Hopefully, you enjoy free speech and you enjoy the ability to read all kinds of books. And it's always sad to read about people burning books or people wanting to get rid of certain things, and I remember whether it's Brave New World or Orwell's 1984, or I think it was Fahrenheit 451, something like that. But I remember, I think it was in Fahrenheit. They actually remembered books because they lived in a society that kept wiping them out. So a person's job would be to actually remember a whole book so that they would just walk around reciting that book, so that people could have a remembrance of the things that were said in the past. And history does tend to repeat itself, so it's really good to read because you tend to see that history is repeating itself. And we as human beings, we tend to think we're doing right things when we're really doing wrong things, and going against sometimes even the beliefs that we think we're supporting. But in supporting it, we actually go against our own belief system. So we tend to be a very convoluted and confused species at times, and sometimes very illogical. So anyway, we're reading the book by Richard Wurmbrand called The Answer to the Atheist Handbook, which was written in 1961 by Moscow's Academy of Science. And this Wurmbrand was imprisoned for 10 or so years under communistic Russia, and he wrote this as kind of a rebuttal to the Atheist Handbook that was very much used to educate a whole generation of people in Russia. So we are on the chapter of Irreverent Attacks Against the Bible. From criticism of the New Testament, the Atheist Handbook passes to criticism of the whole Bible. We are sorry that here also the attacks are vulgar and shallow. We could have expected otherwise. There is such a thing as an elegant, generous form of disbelief. Such, for an example, is the atheism of Ludwig Feuerbach. He did not believe in God but wanted to keep religion, which makes man noble, loving, and righteous. In The Essence of Christianity, Feuerbach called religion holy because it is, quote, the tradition of the first consciousness, unquote, which to him meant childhood. It is not beautiful to keep the memories of the childish period of mankind, he asks. Jesus would not have objected to calling religion childish. He taught us to become like little children. We all value the remembrance of childhood. Why throw them out, as many atheists do? It is because they are reminded of a time when their souls were more beautiful than they are now. We would recommend that our opponents read The Atheist Mass by Honor de Balzac. The chief character is an atheistic surgeon, Desplein. When he was a very poor and hungry student, a water carrier named Boget, animated by Christian love, had helped him, though through hard work and personal sacrifice, to finish his studies, after which the latter became a renowned doctor. Now Desplein was an infidel, but when Boget from his deathbed requested him to say a mass for the repose of his soul, the atheist professor, impelled by gratitude, agreed to comply. Thereafter, he regularly said the required prayers for the deceased Catholic who had done him good. We have attempted to show understanding for atheists, But we feel we have a right to expect cultured atheists to recognize the extent to which their culture depends on the Bible to be at least decent in their attacks. Friedrich Nietzsche was the first to declare that, quote, God is dead, unquote. He was Hitler's favorite philosopher. Hitler drew the right conclusions. If God were dead, Hitler need have no scruples about killing millions of innocent men and even children. But Nietzsche was far removed from his future disciple. Nietzsche spoke about the death of God with holy awe. His madman, after proclaiming the death of God, goes to different churches and sings a requiem aeternam Deo, a hymn of mourning for the dead God. To Nietzsche, God was dead. For him, this conclusion was a source of high drama, but one can sense that he was genuinely sorry that his God was no longer alive. Many atheists, on the contrary, revel in the death of God. Now they no longer have to worry about conscience, truthfulness, and love. They can do what they like. This atheism is indecent. R. Grady, one-time member of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of France, wrote, "We cannot disregard the essential contribution of Christianity without getting poorer." That's in Anathema to Dialogue. Leonard Charsky, once a minister of education in the Soviet government, wrote, quote, "The notion of God always contains something eternally beautiful. Sorrow always dwells in men. He who does not know how to conceive the world religiously is condemned to pessimism." Unquote. Some atheists begin the history of right thought with themselves, with catastrophic results. They end up ignoring or seeking to obliterate truth acquired by mankind during millenniums of development. Consequently, they make a caricature of religion. We regret this. Caricatures are always dangerous for those who draw them. A young woman once had a discussion with the great satirist Hogarth while he was at the drawing board. She expressed a wish to learn to draw caricatures, to which Hogarth replied, quote, "Alas, young lady, it is not a faculty to be envied. Take my advice and never draw caricatures. By the long practice of it, I have lost the enjoyment of beauty. I never see a face but what it is distorted. I never have the satisfaction of beholding the human face divine." Unquote. Those who caricature true religion are in the same situation. In the distorting minor of their warped minds, even angels seem to have the devil's features. They do not realize that if the Bible were set aside as a valueless book, all the famous literature of the world would perish with it. What would remain of Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Milton, Bunyan, Walter Scott, Anatole France? Tennyson said that the Book of Job was the finest poem he had ever read. There are 300 quotations from the Bible in his works. Shakespeare used over 500 ideas and phrases taken from it. Byron's poem Darkness was inspired by the Book of Jeremiah. Even Das Kapital by Marx would have to be changed, along with his other writings of those of Engels, because they are saturated with references to the Bible. If the Bible were taken away, the works of Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, Rembrandt, and many other great painters of the world would be unintelligible to us, as would many of the great pieces of music of Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, Brahms, and others. Listen to the testimony of renowned men. William Gladstone, four-time Premier of Great Britain, said, quote, "If asked what is the remedy for the deeper sorrows of the human heart, what a man should chiefly look to in his progress as the power that is to sustain him under trials and enable him to confront his inevitable afflictions. I must point him to something which is well known him is called the old story, told in an old book, which is the greatest and best gift ever given to mankind." Unquote. He referred to the Bible. Jean-Jacques Rousseau writes, quote, "How mean, how contemptible are the words of our philosophers with all their contradictions compared to the Scriptures. It is possible that a book at once so simple and so sublime should be merely the words of man." Unquote. And that's a question, by the way. Is it possible for the book so simple and so sublime to be merely the words of man? Unquote. Gautier writes, the Bible becomes ever more beautiful the more it is understood. Heinrich Heine, who was very far from being a religious enthusiast, writes, quote, "The depth of creation written into the blue mysteries of heaven, sunrise and sunset promise the fulfillment, birth and death, the whole human drama, everything is in this book. It is the book of books, the Bible." Unquote. The English and German languages in a particular way would not be what they are if they had not been transformed by the Bible. It is the one book which has provided the impetus for giving hundreds of people and tribes their first alphabet. Through the labors of dedicated men and women, it is the first book they learned to read. And I'm definitely know that because I have a friend who puts the Bible, makes an alphabet for tribes in Papua New Guinea, and gives them an alphabet and translates some of the Bible so that they can read for the first time. Garibaldi, the Italian patriot who politically liberated and unified his fatherland, finishing this work in 1870, said the Bible, quote, said about the Bible, "This is the canon that will make Italy free," unquote. Below is the testimony of some of America's most renowned presidents. Washington, quote, "Above all, the pure and unbending light of revelation has had illuminating influence on mankind and increased the blessing of society," unquote. Lincoln, quote, "I have always taken counsel of God and refer to him my plans and have never adopted a course of proceeding without being assured as far as I could be of his approval. I should be the most presumptuous blockhead upon this footstone if I for one day thought that I could discharge the duties which have come upon me since I came into this place, without the aid and enlightenment of one who is wiser and stronger than others," unquote. Grant, quote, "Hold fast to the Bible as the sheet anchor of your liberties. Write its precepts in your hearts and practice them in your lives. To the influence of the book we are indebted for all the progress made in true civilization, and to this we must look as our guide in the future," unquote. Garfield, quote, "Choose the undying Jesus as your everlasting friend and helper. Follow him not simply as a Nazarene, the man of Galilee, but as an ever-living spiritual person, full of love and compassion, who will stand by you in life and death and eternity. The hopes of the world are false, but as the vine lives in the branches, so Christ lives in the Christian, and he shall never die," unquote. McKinley, quote, "We must be doers, not hearers only. To be doers of the word, it is necessary that we first must be hearers of the word. Yet attendance at church is not enough. We must study the Bible, but let it not rest there. We must apply it in active life," unquote. Wilson, "If every man in the United States would read a chapter of the Bible every day, most of our national problems would disappear," unquote. Franklin D. Roosevelt said, quote, "I reiterate the statement which I have made times before, that a revival of religion is what this country most needs. That in such a revival we would find a solution of all of our problems, whether political, economic, or social," unquote. Even the atheist Marx wrote, quote, "Luther, by giving the Bible to the people in the vernacular language, put into their hands a powerful weapon against the nobility, the landlords, and the clergy," unquote. Stalin and Mikoyan were both seminarians. The latter even has a degree in theology. It was the Bible which formed the beginning of their culture. Khrushchev confessed publicly that he learned to read from the Bible. The essential idea of every socialist constitution, quote, "If anyone will not work, neither shall he eat," unquote, is copied textually from the Bible in 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 10. The idea of communism was taken from the Bible, in which we are told, "The multitude of those who believed in Jesus were of one heart and one soul. Neither did anyone say that any of the things he possessed was his own, but they had all things in common. Nor was there anyone from among them who lacked. For all who were possessors of lands or houses sold them, and brought the proceeds of the things that were sold, and laid them at the apostles' feet. And they distributed to each one as had need." Acts 4:32-35. The first disciples of Jesus lived under communism, but a communism based on love and free will. Nobody was pressured, nor was anything expropriated. Love prompted everyone to share with his brother. In spite of dissimilarities, today's communism was also a biblical origin. I can accept the fact that a person might not believe in the Bible, but that should not prevent him from respecting his heritage. Does it count for nothing that the Bible was the first book printed in Europe? Does it count for nothing that Christian missionaries taught the natives of Africa to give up cannibalism, to read, to behave as civilized men? A former cannibal once said to an atheist, "What? This book is not true? I take it in my house and sit down and read it, and it makes my heart burst with joy. How can this be a lie? I was an eater of men, a drunkard, thief, liar, and the book spoke to me and made me a new man. No, this book is not a lie." The educated atheist would have been eaten by the natives in many parts of the world if the missionaries had not taught them first the Christian religion. While spreading atheism, these propagandists should be thankful to Christianity for creating civilization and providing the freedom for them to operate. Very true right there. Hope you guys got that, right? Meaning atheism rides on the Christian civilization, right? The ability to have freedom. So I would just recommend, if anyone doubts that, just get on a plane and go to a country that is not Christianized and do what you're doing in the Christian country you live in there and see what happens. An honorable atheist is one who bows before the church in gratitude for what mankind owes to Christianity. But to spit in the well from which you and the whole civilized world have drunk is terribly wrong. In the 17th century, when atheism was rare among Jews, a Jew told a rabbi, "I don't believe in God." The rabbi embraced the man and said, "How I envy you, brother. You are in a much better spiritual state than I. When I see a man suffering, I say to myself, God will help him, and don't give him assistance. You don't believe in the existence of God, so you have to help him. You have to do the deeds which God would do if he were to exist. Just go on like this. Feed the hungry, comfort the distressed, give truth and joy to those in need. Embrace everybody in love, and in general behave as God would behave if he existed. And then come back in a year and tell me if there is a God or not." The rabbi could afford to take an eloquent attitude towards the atheist in order to encourage him to squeeze the best out of his atheism. Some atheists do not behave like this towards a believer. They live on a lower level, and their whole stand is untenable. They appeal to our reason, trying with arguments to prove their point. Now, if the atheists admit that we can reason, why was it impossible to find a Bible in any bookshop in the Soviet Union? Question. The population should have been able to read it for themselves, compare it with what its opponents have to say, and then draw their own conclusions. Why was the Bible banned? Did they not believe in man's power to reason rightly? Then why go to the trouble to adduce arguments? Just give the order, disbelieve, and be done with it. Good point. So again, sometimes we think we're going the right direction, but really we're actually going against our own positions. And that's what he's getting at with atheistic Russia, right? If man is able to reason better without the Bible than without the knowledge of God, then why refuse man the opportunity to reason by banning the Bible? See, it contradicts the point. So a lot of times that's how we live and we don't even know it. Yeah. So I think it was, let me see if I can find it. I don't know if I can find it right now, but it's a really good quote. Let me see if I can find it. You guys can hold on. Blaise Pascal once said, "For nature is such that it indicates everywhere a lost God, both in man and outside man, and a corrupted nature." This is great too. If one does not know himself to be full of pride, ambition, lust, weakness, misery, and injustice, he is very blind. Right? So sometimes you can think passionately about a subject and you can think you're really going the right direction, but man, you're filled with pride, ambition, lust, weakness, misery, and injustice. Very blind. Yeah. So we can definitely be that way. Anyway, some good stuff for today. I love that chapter by Wurmbrand. That was awesome. It's good stuff. So hey, next week we'll pick up on another chapter of the Answer to the Atheist Handbook by Richard Wurmbrand. Okay, you guys take care. Bye-bye.